Maria Sofia wiped her tears quickly as she heard footsteps approaching down the marble hallway of the Grand Palace Hotel. At 23 years old, she had been working as a housekeeper for almost 2 years, but tonight felt different. Tonight, everything seemed to be falling apart. She pressed her phone closer to her ear, trying to muffle her voice as she spoke to her younger brother Carlos back in their small village in Guatemala. "I don't know what else to do," she whispered in Spanish, glancing around nervously. "The doctors say Mama needs surgery right away, but we don't have the money. Even with my job here, it's not enough." Carlos's voice crackled through the cheap phone. "Maria, you're doing everything you can. Maybe we can ask the neighbors for help or—" "No," Maria interrupted, her voice breaking. "We've already borrowed too much from everyone. I send home most of my paycheck every month, but it's still not enough for the operation. The doctor said if we wait much longer—" She couldn't finish the sentence. The Grand Palace Hotel was one of the most expensive hotels in the city, where rooms cost more in one night than Maria made in 3 months. She had seen wealthy guests throw away food that could feed her family for days, spend thousands on drinks without thinking twice, and tip more for a single meal than she earned in a week. Yet here she was, unable to afford her mother's medical treatment. "Listen, Carlos," she said, trying to sound stronger than she felt. "I have to go back to work. My supervisor will be angry if she finds me here. I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Give Mama my love and tell her everything will be fine." But as she hung up the phone, Maria knew she was lying. Nothing was fine. Her mother's condition was getting worse every day, and the small amount she managed to save each month wouldn't be enough for many more years. She had already taken on extra shifts, cleaned additional rooms, and even worked in the hotel kitchen during her breaks. There was nothing more she could do. Maria took a deep breath and wiped her eyes one more time. She straightened her dark blue uniform and picked up her cleaning cart. Room 1247 was next on her list, one of the luxury suites on the 12th floor. She had cleaned this room before, and it always amazed her how someone could spend so much money on a single night's stay. As she walked toward the elevator, Maria tried to push thoughts of her mother out of her mind. She needed this job. Her family back home depended on the money she sent every month, and she couldn't afford to make any mistakes. Mrs. Henderson, her supervisor, had already warned her about keeping her personal problems away from work. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Maria stepped inside with her cart. She pressed the button for the 12th floor and watched the numbers light up as they climbed higher. Through the glass elevator walls, she could see the city lights twinkling below. Somewhere out there, her mother was lying in a hospital bed waiting for an operation they couldn't afford. When the elevator stopped, Maria pushed her cart down the quiet hallway. The luxury floor was always peaceful at this time of night. Most of the wealthy guests were either out at expensive restaurants or already asleep in their comfortable beds. She knocked softly on the door of room 1247, waited a moment, then used her master key to enter. The suite was enormous, bigger than the entire house she had grown up in. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the city, and the furniture looked like it belonged in a palace. Maria began her routine, changing the bed sheets, cleaning the bathroom, and dusting every surface until it sparkled. As she worked, she couldn't help but think about the contrast between this world and her own. The guest in this room probably spent more on room service in one evening than her family spent on groceries in a month. The marble bathroom was bigger than her entire bedroom, and the clothes hanging in the closet cost more than she would make in a lifetime. But Maria wasn't bitter. She was grateful for her job and the opportunity it gave her to help her family. She just wished it could be enough to save her mother's life. As she finished cleaning and prepared to move to the next room, she said a quiet prayer, hoping that somehow, some way, a miracle would happen. Alexander Blackwood had just returned from a business dinner that had run later than expected. At 38 years old, he was the CEO of Blackwood Industries, a technology company worth over $3 billion. He had built his empire from nothing, starting with a small software company in his garage and turning it into one of the most successful tech firms in the world. But tonight, success felt hollow. He had just signed a deal that would make his company another $100 million, yet he felt empty inside. Alexander had everything money could buy: luxury cars, private jets, homes around the world. But he had lost the things that truly mattered. His wife had left him 2 years ago, taking their daughter with her, saying he cared more about his company than his family. As Alexander walked down the hallway toward his suite, he heard someone crying. He stopped and listened, recognizing the pain in the voice even though he couldn't understand the Spanish words being spoken. He had heard that same kind of desperation in his own voice years ago, when he was struggling to keep his first company alive and nearly lost everything. Something about the young woman's voice touched him deeply. He could hear the love and worry for someone else, the kind of selfless concern that he had forgotten existed. Alexander stood quietly in the shadows, not wanting to intrude but unable to walk away. He understood enough Spanish from his business dealings in Latin America to catch some words: mama, surgery, money, doctors. When the call ended, Alexander watched as the young maid wiped her tears and tried to compose herself. He recognized her from the previous nights he had stayed at the hotel. She had always been polite and professional, cleaning his room with careful attention to detail. He had barely noticed her before, but now he saw something different, the strength it took to keep working while her heart was breaking. Alexander waited until she had entered the elevator before he continued to his room. Once inside his luxury suite, he couldn't stop thinking about what he had witnessed. Here was someone who probably made in a year what he spent on a single business lunch. Yet she was working multiple jobs to support her family. The contrast struck him powerfully. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stood by the window looking out at the city lights. Alexander had grown up poor, raised by a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. He remembered the nights she had cried quietly in the kitchen, thinking he couldn't hear her worrying about bills and his future. That memory had driven him to build his fortune, but somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what it felt like to struggle. Alexander thought about his own daughter, Emma, who was now 8 years old and living across the country with her mother. When was the last time he had really talked to her? Not just asked about school or what she wanted for her birthday. When was the last time he had done something purely out of kindness, without expecting anything in return? He pulled out his phone and called his personal assistant David even though it was nearly midnight. "Mr. Blackwood, is everything all right?" David's voice was alert despite the late hour. "David, I need you to do something for me first thing in the morning. There's a housekeeper here at the Grand Palace Hotel. Young woman, probably in her early 20s, speaks Spanish. I need you to find out everything you can about her situation. Her full name, where she's from, her family situation, everything." "Sir, may I ask why?" Alexander paused, still looking out at the city. "Let's just say I want to help someone who deserves it. Can you also contact the hotel management and find out who handles employee records? I'll need to speak with them tomorrow." "Of course, sir. Anything else?" "Yes, cancel my morning meetings. I have something more important to do." After hanging up, Alexander sat in the expensive leather chair and thought about the maid's phone conversation. Her name tag had read Maria, he remembered now. She had been trying to save her mother's life, working as hard as she could but still falling short. How many people were out there right now, facing impossible situations while people like him lived in luxury without a care in the world? Alexander had always believed that he had worked hard for everything he achieved, and he had. But he also knew that luck and opportunity had played a part. He had been born in a country where education was available, where banks would give loans to start businesses, where hard work could actually lead to success. Not everyone had those advantages. He finished his whiskey and prepared for bed, but sleep didn't come easily. Alexander kept thinking about Maria's tears, her quiet desperation and the love in her voice when she spoke about her mother. Tomorrow he would do something about it. For the first time in years, he felt excited about using his wealth for something that truly mattered. The next morning, Alexander woke up with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in months. By 7 a.m., his assistant David had already gathered the information he requested. Maria Sofia Gonzalez, 23 years old, had been working at the Grand Palace Hotel for nearly 2 years. She lived in a small apartment 20 minutes away by bus and sent most of her earnings to her family in a rural village outside Guatemala City. David had spoken with Mrs. Henderson, the housekeeping supervisor, who described Maria as one of their most reliable employees. "She never misses work, always volunteers for extra shifts, and the guests never complain about her service," Mrs. Henderson had told him. "She's quiet, keeps to herself, but she's a good worker." Alexander also learned that Maria's mother, Rosa Gonzalez, was 52 years old and needed emergency heart surgery. The operation would cost approximately $45,000, an amount that seemed impossible for Maria's family to raise. Her father had died in a construction accident 3 years earlier, leaving Maria as the primary supporter for her mother and younger brother. "Sir," David said during their morning call, "I also discovered that Maria has been taking English classes at a community center in the evenings, after her hotel shifts end. The instructor says she's one of the brightest students they've ever had, but she's missed several recent classes due to extra work shifts." This information made Alexander even more determined to help. Here was someone who was working multiple jobs, supporting her family and still trying to improve herself through education. She represented everything he admired about the human spirit, yet she was trapped by circumstances beyond her control. Alexander dressed in a simple business suit and made his way down to the hotel's management offices. He had arranged to meet with James Morrison, the hotel's general manager, at 9 a.m. Morrison was clearly nervous about meeting with such a wealthy and influential guest. "Mr. Blackwood, it's an honor to have you staying with us again," Morrison said, gesturing to a chair in his elegant office. "How can we help you today?" "I want to discuss one of your employees," Alexander said directly. "Maria Gonzalez, one of your housekeepers. I need to know more about her situation and I want to help her." Morrison looked confused. "Is there a problem with her service?" "If she's done something wrong—" "No, quite the opposite," Alexander interrupted. "She's done everything right. I overheard her last night talking about her mother's medical situation, and I want to help. But I need to do this carefully and respectfully." Alexander explained his plan to Morrison, who listened with growing amazement. They discussed the best way to approach Maria without embarrassing her or making her feel uncomfortable. Morrison agreed to call Maria to his office later that morning, telling her only that a guest wanted to commend her excellent service. Meanwhile, Alexander used his connections to research the best cardiac surgeons in Guatemala. He found that Dr. Eduardo Martinez at Hospital San Juan de Dios in Guatemala City was internationally recognized for his expertise in heart surgery. Alexander's assistant began making calls to arrange a consultation for Rosa Gonzalez. At 10:30 a.m., Alexander positioned himself in a small conference room adjacent to Morrison's office. Through a window he could see Maria enter the manager's office, looking nervous and smoothing her uniform. She sat straight in her chair, hands folded in her lap, clearly worried that she might be in trouble. "Maria," Morrison began, "you've been with us for almost 2 years now and your work has been exceptional. In fact, one of our most distinguished guests specifically asked to meet with you to express his appreciation." Maria's eyes widened with surprise. "I don't understand, sir." "Which guest?" "Mr. Alexander Blackwood. He's been staying with us several times and he's very impressed with your professionalism and attention to detail." Alexander could see the confusion on Maria's face. He had stayed at the hotel multiple times, but he knew she probably hadn't paid much attention to individual guests. To her, he was likely just another wealthy businessman in an expensive suit. Morrison gestured toward the conference room. "He's waiting to speak with you next door. Don't worry, you're not in any trouble." Quite the opposite. As Maria stood up and walked toward the conference room, Alexander felt his heart rate increase. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals with some of the world's most powerful people, but this conversation felt more important than any of those. He was about to change someone's life and he wanted to do it right. Maria knocked softly on the conference room door before entering. When she saw Alexander sitting at the table, she looked even more confused. "Please sit down," Alexander said gently, gesturing to a chair across from him. "And please don't worry. You're not in any trouble. I asked to speak with you because I was touched by your dedication and hard work." Maria sat down carefully, still looking uncertain. "Thank you, sir, but I'm not sure why you wanted to meet with me. I just try to do my job well." Alexander studied her face, seeing the same strength and dignity he had witnessed the night before, even in her confusion. This young woman had been through so much, yet she carried herself with grace and pride. He was about to give her the best news of her life, but he wanted to do it in a way that honored her strength and preserved her dignity. Alexander leaned forward slightly, choosing his words carefully. "Maria, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you from Guatemala?" Maria nodded, still looking puzzled. "Yes, sir. From a small village outside Guatemala City. How did you know?" "I heard you speaking Spanish last night in the hallway," Alexander said gently. "I couldn't help but notice that you seemed upset. I know this might sound strange, but I grew up in a situation similar to yours. My mother worked multiple jobs to support us, and I remember how hard that was. Maria's cheeks reddened with embarrassment. I'm sorry if I was too loud, sir. I was talking to my family back home, but I should have been more professional. Please don't apologize, Alexander interrupted. You have nothing to be sorry for. Actually, I was impressed by how much you care about your family. That kind of love and dedication is rare. He paused, watching her face carefully. Maria, I know this is very personal, but I heard you mention your mother needs surgery. I hope you don't mind me asking about her condition. Tears immediately welled up in Maria's eyes, but she tried to maintain her composure. My mother has a heart problem, sir. The doctors say she needs an operation soon, but it's very expensive. I'm trying to save the money, but... Her voice trailed off. Alexander felt his chest tighten with emotion. Here she was, probably thinking she might lose her job for taking a personal call at work. And she was still worried about maintaining her professional demeanor. How much does the surgery cost? He asked quietly. Maria looked down at her hands. $45,000, sir. It might as well be $1 million. I make about $1,800 a month here, and I send most of it home for my family's expenses. Even if I could save every penny, it would take years, and the doctors say my mother doesn't have that long. Alexander reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Maria, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. If someone offered to help pay for your mother's surgery, would you accept it? Maria's eyes widened in shock. Sir, I don't understand. Who would do such a thing? Someone who believes that good people deserve good things, Alexander said simply. Someone who has been blessed with more money than he knows what to do with, and who has forgotten what really matters in life until last night. The room fell silent except for the sound of Maria's quick breathing. She stared at Alexander as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Are you offering to help my mother? She whispered. Alexander nodded. I'm not just offering to help, Maria. I'm telling you that your mother is going to have her surgery. Today, if possible. Maria's hands flew to her mouth and tears began streaming down her face. Sir, I can't. This is too much. I could never pay you back. I don't understand why you would do this for someone like me. Someone like you? Alexander repeated. Maria, do you know what I see when I look at you? I see someone who works harder in one day than most people work in a week. I see someone who sacrifices her own comfort and dreams to take care of her family. I see someone who is studying English at night after working long shifts because she believes in improving herself. You are exactly the kind of person who deserves help. Alexander pulled up his assistant David's number on his phone. I'm going to call my assistant right now. We've already contacted one of the best heart surgeons in Guatemala City, Dr. Eduardo Martinez. He's expecting to hear from your family today to schedule your mother's surgery immediately. Maria was sobbing now, unable to speak. Alexander handed her a box of tissues from the conference table and continued. There's more, Maria. I want to make sure your family is taken care of during your mother's recovery. I'm setting up a fund that will provide for your family's living expenses for the next year, and I want to pay for you to continue your education. You mentioned you're taking English classes. I'd like to pay for you to attend college if that's something you're interested in. Maria finally found her voice, though it was shaky with emotion. Sir, Mr. Blackwood, this is like a dream. I don't know what to say. Why are you doing this for me? I'm nobody special. Alexander's own eyes were beginning to water. Maria, last night I was sitting in my expensive suite feeling sorry for myself because I have everything money can buy, but I've lost touch with what really matters. Then I heard you crying in the hallway, not for yourself, but for your mother. You reminded me what love looks like, what sacrifice means, what it means to be a good person. He leaned back in his chair. I have a daughter, Emma. She's 8 years old, and I've been so busy building my business empire that I've missed most of her childhood. Last night, listening to you, I realized that the most important things in life aren't the things you can buy. They're the people you love and the good you can do in the world. Alexander stood up and extended his hand to Maria. So, Miss Gonzalez, will you let me help your family? Not because you owe me anything, but because sometimes good things happen to good people, and because I need to remember what it feels like to do something that really matters. Maria stood up on shaking legs and took Alexander's hand, still unable to fully process what was happening. Yes, she whispered through her tears. Yes, please help my mother. I can't believe this is real. Alexander smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. It's very real, Maria, and we're going to make sure everything happens quickly. Within the next hour, Alexander's team had arranged everything. His private jet was being prepared to fly Maria to Guatemala City that very afternoon. Dr. Martinez had cleared his schedule to examine Rosa Gonzalez immediately upon their arrival. The best cardiac surgical team in Central America was being assembled for the operation. Alexander insisted on accompanying Maria on the flight. "I want to meet your mother," he told her, "and I want to make sure she receives the very best care possible." During the 3-hour flight, Maria told Alexander about her life. She had been just 20 years old when her father died in a construction accident, leaving the family in debt and struggling to survive. She had given up her dreams of attending university to take care of her mother and brother, eventually making the difficult decision to leave Guatemala to find work in the United States. "I cried for weeks when I had to leave," Maria confided as they flew over the Gulf of Mexico. "But Carlos was only 15 and Mama couldn't work because of her heart condition. I had to do something." Alexander learned that Maria had originally planned to become a teacher. She had always loved children and believed education was the key to breaking the cycle of poverty. Even now, working at the hotel and studying English at night, she dreamed of one day returning to school. "After this is over, after your mother is healthy, would you like to go back to school?" Alexander asked. Maria's eyes lit up. "More than anything, sir. But I could never afford it. What if I told you that you could attend any university you want, anywhere in the world with all expenses paid?" Maria stared at him in amazement. "Sir, you've already done so much. I couldn't ask for more." "You're not asking," Alexander said with a smile. "I'm offering. Maria, you have incredible potential. The world needs more people like you. People who care about others, who work hard, who never give up. I want to invest in your future." When they landed in Guatemala City, a medical team was waiting to transport them directly to the hospital. Rosa Gonzalez was a small, fragile woman who looked much older than her 52 years. When Maria walked into her hospital room, Rosa began crying immediately. "Mija, what are you doing here? You should be at work," Rosa said in Spanish, holding her daughter's hands. "Mama, I have incredible news," Maria replied, also speaking Spanish. Alexander understood enough to follow their conversation. "This gentleman, Mr. Blackwood, he's going to pay for your surgery. You're going to be healthy again." Rosa looked at Alexander with confusion and gratitude. Through Maria's translation, she thanked him repeatedly, saying she would pray for him every day for the rest of her life. Dr. Martinez examined Rosa thoroughly and confirmed that she was a good candidate for the surgery. "We can perform the operation tomorrow morning," he told Alexander. "With this procedure, she should make a full recovery and live a normal, healthy life." Alexander arranged for Maria's entire family to stay in comfortable accommodations near the hospital during Rosa's recovery. He also met Carlos, Maria's 19-year-old brother, who was now attending university thanks to scholarships and the money Maria had been sending home. "Your sister is a hero," Alexander told Carlos through Maria's translation. "She sacrificed everything for your family." That evening, as they waited for Rosa's surgery the next morning, Alexander called his own daughter Emma for the first time in weeks. "Daddy." Emma's excited voice came through the phone. "Where are you?" "I'm in Guatemala, sweetheart, helping someone very special." "Emma, I want you to know that Daddy has learned something important. The most important thing in life isn't how much money you have or how big your company is. The most important thing is helping people and spending time with the people you love." "Does this mean you'll come visit me more often?" Emma asked hopefully. "Yes, baby. I promise. In fact, I want you to come stay with me next month. We'll do whatever you want to do." After hanging up with Emma, Alexander felt like a different person than he had been just 24 hours ago. Meeting Maria had reminded him of his own values, his own priorities. He had been so focused on building his empire that he had forgotten why he started building it in the first place, to create a better life for the people he loved. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. He walked through the hospital corridors, thinking about the chain of events that had brought him here. If he hadn't returned to his hotel room at that exact moment, if he hadn't heard Maria crying, if he hadn't been moved by her dedication to her family, none of this would be happening. Sometimes, Alexander realized, the most important moments in life happen when you least expect them. Sometimes, helping someone else is the very thing you need to save yourself. Rosa's surgery took place the following morning and was a complete success. Dr. Martinez emerged from the operating room with a smile, telling the waiting family that Rosa's heart was now strong and healthy. She would need a few weeks of recovery, but she would be able to live a normal, active life. When Rosa woke up in the recovery room, she was surrounded by her children and Alexander. Despite her weakness from the surgery, she insisted on holding Alexander's hand and speaking to him in Spanish. "She says you are an angel sent from God," Maria translated, tears streaming down her face. "She says she will never forget your kindness, and she will pray for your happiness every day." Alexander felt his own eyes fill with tears. "Tell her she doesn't need to thank me. Tell her that helping her family has given me more joy than anything I've done in years." During Rosa's recovery, Alexander spent time getting to know the Gonzalez family better. He learned about their small village, their traditions, and their dreams for the future. Carlos wanted to become an engineer and help build better infrastructure in Guatemala. Rosa had once been a skilled seamstress before her heart condition prevented her from working. Alexander also spent time exploring Guatemala, seeing how different life was for most people compared to his world of luxury hotels and private jets. He visited schools that needed supplies, medical clinics that lacked equipment, and families who were struggling just as the Gonzalez family had been. 3 weeks later, Rosa was released from the hospital, healthy and strong. The entire family gathered for a celebration dinner, and Alexander announced his plans for Maria's future. "Maria, I've spoken with admissions officers at several universities in the United States," he said. "You've been accepted to 3 of the top education programs in the country, with full scholarships covering tuition, room, board, and all expenses." Maria gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. "Sir, I can't believe this is happening." "There's more," Alexander continued. "I've also established a foundation, the Rosa Gonzalez Foundation for Heart Health, that will provide free cardiac surgery for families who can't afford it. I want you to help me run it after you finish your education." Alexander had realized that this experience had changed him fundamentally. He no longer wanted to simply accumulate wealth for its own sake. He wanted to use his resources to make a real difference in the world, and he wanted Maria to be part of that mission. 2 months later, Maria started her studies at Columbia University in New York, majoring in education with a minor in nonprofit management. She excelled in her classes and became a leader among her fellow students, sharing her story and inspiring others to think about how they could help their communities. Alexander restructured his entire life after meeting Maria. He stepped back from the day-to-day operations of his company to focus more on philanthropy and spending time with his daughter Emma. He and his ex-wife worked out a new custody arrangement that allowed Emma to spend much more time with him. The Rosa Gonzalez Foundation grew rapidly, providing free heart surgery for hundreds of families across Latin America. Alexander often traveled to Guatemala to oversee the foundation's work, and he always made time to visit Rosa, who had become like a second mother to him. Maria graduated from Columbia with honors 4 years later. At her graduation ceremony, Alexander sat in the front row next to Rosa and Carlos, cheering as Maria walked across the stage to receive her diploma. Rosa was now healthy and vibrant, working as a coordinator for the foundation's Guatemala operations. After graduation, Maria became the executive director of the Rosa Gonzalez Foundation. Under her leadership, the organization expanded to provide not just cardiac surgery, but also education scholarships, clean water projects, and economic development programs throughout Central America. 5 years after their first meeting in the hotel conference room, Alexander and Maria stood together at the dedication ceremony for a new cardiac wing at Hospital San Juan de Dios, named in honor of Rosa Gonzalez. The wing would provide free heart surgery for anyone who needed it, regardless of their ability to pay. "Do you ever think about how different our lives would be if we hadn't met that night?" Maria asked Alexander as they watched the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Alexander smiled, thinking about all the lives they had changed together, all the families they had helped, all the hope they had brought to communities across Latin America. "I think about it all the time," he said. "That night in the hotel hallway was the most important moment of my life. It reminded me what really matters." Maria nodded, watching as children from the local school sang songs of gratitude in Spanish and English. "Sometimes I think we don't find our purpose in life. Sometimes our purpose finds us, usually when we least expect it." Alexander looked at the woman who had changed his life simply by being herself. Kind, hardworking, devoted to her family, never giving up hope even in the darkest moments. "You're right," he said. "And sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply notice when someone needs help, and then do everything in our power to provide it." As the ceremony concluded and families gathered to celebrate the new medical facility that would save countless lives, Alexander felt a deep satisfaction that no amount of money or business success had ever provided. He had learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or possessions, but in the positive impact you can make on other people's lives. And it all began with a young maid crying in a hotel hallway, and a billionaire who chose to listen with his heart instead of walking away.